Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining Crafting a Guest-Centric Brewery, a Path to Exceptional Business Results. I'm Patricia Mejia, CMO at GoTab, and I'm kind of psyched to do this. This is the second time we're doing this presentation in the last month. We delivered it at North Carolina Brewers Guild, and it was really successful there. So looking forward to hearing it again in round two, which is always the better round. And want to introduce Doug Cleary. Doug's going to be our presenter today, so I'm going to hand it off to Doug. And Doug, I'll just let everyone know if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. We are open to making this very conversational and answering any questions that you have. So feel free to put your questions actually in the Q&A, not in the chat, in the Q&A. And with that, I'll hand it off to Doug.
Thanks, Patricia. If you want to move next slide. And hello, everyone. My name is Doug, and I'm an enterprise account executive specializing in brewery commerce here at GoTab. For those of you who may be new to our webinar series, and as a general refresher, GoTab is a premier commerce platform designed for the hospitality industry to shape your best guest experience. GoTab does a lot to support craft beer sales and provide optionality in how you structure your service model. So my day-to-day is working with operators of breweries, brew pubs, and a lot of mixed-use F&B spaces like food halls and marketplaces. So for those of you who have pop-ups and rotating food trucks and things like that, this will definitely be relevant for you too. My background includes more than 15 years of experience in the hospitality industry. And throughout that time, I've gained insights into how to elevate the quality of customer service, as well as how to use modern tools to be able to help shape the type of guest experience that we're looking to achieve. And GoTab does a lot to support the craft beer sales and provide optionality in how you structure your service model. So today we're going to be showing a little bit about how we utilize some of those tools, and I think it'll be really helpful for us to see the different ways that we can structure each taproom operation. A little bit about me on just the quick note before we scoot over to the next slide. So my favorite personal note, my favorite craft beer styles are really brown ales up and down the spectrum, malty brown ales to sour brown ales. Fun fact I learned recently that I wanted to share, Oud Bruin actually stands for old brown. So if you get a chance to see that type of style pop up, I highly recommend it, and just one that's one of my favorites. So anything in a foeder is really my jam and my go-to. Okay, now next slide. Okay, today we're going to be talking about three primary topics. First, we're going to be talking about what is guest centricity anyways, and why is it an important concept to at least understand. Second is mapping the customer journey. How does a customer find its way to your brand? And then how do we convert that customer to a regular customer and ideally a brand ambassador? Third, we'll share some ways which technology is shaping the taproom and kind of some of the modern tools that you have available to you to be able to leverage the type of experience that you're looking for. And we'll talk about these from a consultative standpoint so that we can dispel some of the misconceptions around how to properly use technology to get what you're trying to achieve. And then we'll leave a little bit of extra time for questions and feedback. Next slide. Okay, so the methodology behind being guest-centric is that you're really focusing on the customer before the product. So we have to ask, what type of experience are we trying to cultivate? It's not as easy as if you build it, they will come. Great tasting beer and variety are certainly going to be part of the plans, but if you put yourself in the shoes of your customer and you can start to think about every way in which they might want to interact with your brand, then we can start to reverse engineer that experience. And how do you go about being guest-centric? Well, we aim to personalize the approach. If you find easy ways to remember and show these customers that you know their name, the beer that they like, the activities they enjoy, and the communities that they're helping you to build, there's going to be a connection there that has real value. And from mug clubs to teachers to first responders, industry and trivia night crowds, these segments that we're going to touch on will cast a wider net of potential personalized experiences. And then third, you want to really continue to exceed expectations. In an increasingly competitive landscape, we want to refine what it means to elevate hospitality to the next level. What can we be doing better to go the extra mile? And one of the things I've learned in service is the difference between good and excellent are really often found in the details. So are we really focusing on what those details are to make sure that we're trying to get the best out of the experience that we're going for? Next slide. Okay, this is an analysis I thought was really helpful. It was an analysis on customer experience that shows the different levels of satisfaction in tap rooms around New York State by Cornell University Craft Beverage Institute. The customers were asked to rate their experience on 22 criteria around 5 primary categories. The 5 categories were brewery ambiance, brewery location, beer tasting, retail sales, and service quality. Now, you'll note that out of those, there were 2 of those categories that were product focused, 2 that are location specific, and 1 that's people driven. That's the service quality piece. We have found that in the ones who were highly satisfied, that they spent an average of 17% more than regulars. And the key correlation, we'll talk a little bit in the next slide here, is that each of those who exemplified the highly satisfied category had scored exceptional marks in the guest service section. So we're really recognizing that the people piece is one that's critical in making sure that not only are we able to achieve that experience, but it actually does have some real tangible value that we can tie to it. Next slide. Okay. So a few of these help to support this a bit more. But what we're seeing here is these are consumer statistics that came right out of PwC on customer experience. A couple important notes: we see a third of the customers being fickle enough to leave a brand that they enjoy after 1 bad experience. Yikes! But people are very temperamental, and sometimes that's all it takes. More importantly, we had learned that in this same study that 92% of customers will leave your brand after 3 bad experiences. So you've really got to try to capture each time that you can, but sometimes it's 3 strikes, you're out, and that's what we see in this case here. And keeping in mind, historically, 50% of guests will actually only walk through a tap room door 1 time. So if you're not capitalizing on all of the abilities to create a great experience for those who are going in there that first time, you're potentially leaving out a really large audience that we're able to convert to those loyal and more longer term customers. And this that 46% of that they are really recognizing the importance of a knowledgeable employee. That's that correlation, that's that connection right there between the importance of having that great guest service and making that experience exceptional. And this is actually applied in a real life scenario. So sharing a quick lesson learned. Some of my team was in management at Drake's Brewing. They were part of one of the director of operations there for several years. They made it a priority to circulate customer experience cheat sheets. And what that did was it gave the staff key information to be aware of and convey to guests. So, what was the upcoming beers that we're going to be rotating through in the next upcoming brewing cycle? What are the events that they wanted to let them know that they thought that they might have some interest in attending? After this change, and they started to do this and be consistent with the message, they found that they saw a lot of positive improvements. It created more opportunity for easy touch points to build rapport with the guests. And it also created a marked increase in check averages and turnout for those special events. Next slide. Okay. Maybe let me take a quick pause here. Any questions on anything so far? Anything in the chat, or should we keep rolling?
Let's keep rolling.
Okay, great. So let's talk about mapping the customer journey. And have you done this for your business? One of the first steps you can take to apply the guest-centric approach is to map all of the steps one might take to become a loyal customer. Okay. So by the way, there are readily available tools that will give great ROI at each stage of mapping the journey. And it starts before the customer ever walks through the doors. So the vast majority of potential customers today will interact with your brand digitally before they ever come in physically. So understanding this full cycle is really critical. Each of these steps are expansive enough so that they're their own session. So for the purpose of this conversation and that we can touch on some of the technology in Taproom, we're going to be focusing on the orange piece here that's highlighted for the on-premise experiences, which is arguably the most critical of the phase because that's going to be kind of connecting the bookends of the pre and the post-sale process for the customer journey. By the way, if there's an interest in hosting some additional webinars on pre-sale and post-engagement, let us know in the chat and we'll include that as part of an additional series, okay? Next slide. Okay, as I mentioned, there's a lot of different templates you can see on customer journey. There's a lot that are helpful, but I found this one to be a really good workflow for the type of service model that we're talking about. And the 5 stages that you'll see, to keep in mind, this is the optimal path that you want the customers to walk down in experiencing your brand. So we have awareness, consideration, purchase, retention, and advocacy. So each of these, as they advance farther down the path, they become more valuable to you as your business and being able to have that greater lifetime value of that customer. The awareness starts oftentimes before they ever come through. But if they were coming across you for that, when we talk about that brewery location and then brewery ambiance, that's that like 1-2 punch of you're getting to the location physically, it's aesthetically pleasing from the outside, that you've done the right things to be able to make sure it's warm and inviting, and then you're actually having them come in and get that first experience as they walk through the door. That's consideration. So the consideration, how many times have we walked into a business and tap rooms are not exclusive in this category as being failed foolproof in this space? How many times has any of us walked into a tap room, walked around, and then walked back out without purchasing anything? So what are we figuring out that we need to do to incentivize the purchase, to make sure that they're actually able to interact with your brand beyond just visually seeing it, but now they're tasting the product, they're interacting with your staff, and they're making that purchase? All of those experiences that we're going to talk a little bit more about in this presentation, we'll talk around the purchase and the retention piece. We're going to be pretty heavy on making sure that we cement that experience the best that it can be. And then ultimately, we want to have them leave and be a great advocate. A great positive advocate can do so much more for your business than just marketing dollars will do right out of the gate. Nothing against marketing. Marketing is absolutely essential to every business, but we also want to make sure that we're converting any opportunity that we can for customers to give that really good, genuine feedback that will be able to spread out and connect to new audiences that the business owners themselves may not be fully aware that they can tap into. Next slide. Okay, so how do we get from this type of customer, let's move forward, to this? So we're looking for a happy table of customers, having a great time, not flagging down staff for something little that they might have missed that might have made the difference between that, that good experience and that really excellent, exceptional experience. Let's go next slide. Okay, so these are 6 experiential factors that were identified. First, we'll talk about service model. Are they ordering at the counter, at the table? Are they ordering via QR code, or maybe a hybrid model of service, which is one of the things that GoTab really specializes in being able to provide? What are the pros and cons of each of these? Keeping the human touch, and this is what we'll touch on a bit with technology, is how are we able to use technology in a way that feels organic, that's able to help to increase the human touch? We want to be giving staff the ability to have more time at the tables and less time at the terminal. So how can we go about that process? And we want to find the right balance of where the service is able to keep that touch and then also keep that personalized experience. And do you have a kitchen? If not, what is your business's relationship with food? Can you partner with a food truck or a pop-up? There's a symbiotic relationship that we found through all of our sales and analytics in beer and food. If they're able to stay and make that part of the experience, it does impact the ability to sell additional products, stay longer in the location, and be able to really leverage that experience to the best of its ability. And what are the simple ways that we can be able to help work with that so that they're not overlooked? Communication. So communication always is key, from that education piece, but also builds efficiencies in service. Product visibility. What are the most effective ways to let guests know about what you have to offer? And one of the notes about that highly satisfied guest category, in addition to the knowledgeable staff member, the other key performance indicator was variety of product. So variety of product was ranked like one of the most highest elements in that survey, that ended up being the key predictor of whether they were going to be highly satisfied or not. You want to have the ability to keep the staple products, but if you can rotate some variety in there and be able to kind of figure out some specific niche products that then new customers can connect with, they create these tendrils that are able to reach out and access different consumer mindsets depending upon what they're looking for. And then the last is going to be the brewery tours and special events, certainly not least. This is a more expansive topic, but you can find what's right for your audience and experiment in bringing in new audiences depending upon what type of experiences and what type of audiences that you know are local, or maybe others that you want to try to have the opportunity to connect with, and just experiment to see what makes the most sense and what starts to resonate. Let's go next. Keep on rolling. Any questions pop up, Patricia?
Well, I do have one question, just in terms of when you look at like awareness and consideration, like what are the best examples of that you've seen in a tap room or a brewery? Like who's doing it the best, and any specific examples you can share?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I will give one that comes top of mind. So there's a brewery owner also named is Doug. He owns a brewery down in Tampa, Florida, called Cycle Brewing. Cycle Brewing had, at the time, he was actually winning some awards with putting out a product for mostly IPAs. Like, it was very IPA driven time. IPA was really on the rise at the time. And in that time, he was just starting to experiment with an idea that he had heard about, that he had started to hear like was kind of just getting played around with a little bit, of barrel aging beers, which at the time was really not a concept that was used very much. It was just sort of in its infancy at the time. And what he found was he was able to acquire a bunch of whiskey and bourbon barrels that were able to impart some flavor in some of the stronger beers, like these heavy stouts. And you think like, hey, probably not going to be able to be a really good seller of very strong, dark beer in the middle of Florida. But lo and behold, as he started to age some of these beers and then offer them up for samplings to his regular customers, they really just started to take to him. So instead of him leaning into the products that he felt like he really wanted, he started leaning into the response from the guests, and by through experimentation and some trial and error and being able to see what they had responded to and liked. And now Cycle Brewing, if you have seen them, or if you haven't tried some of their barrel aged beers, they're absolutely stunning, fantastic, award-winning. You can go, really throughout the country and the world as some of the most premier winners of that style. So, sometimes through
Great.
Yeah.
So he's kind of figuring out how he can stand out from the competition, and he came up with this unique way. That's really cool. And then a follow-up to that question, this didn't come in the chat, but I'm curious, when you talk about consideration and the number of people that actually walk into a tap room and turn around and leave without buying anything, what kinds of tactics can operators use for that kind of scenario?
Yeah, great question. So some of those are calls to action signage. Like sometimes you're in a large space, especially if you have a large square footage location, you can kind of walk in and start to get lost. So the quicker that you can start to direct the flow of traffic, and that might even be as simple as some little arrows on the ground that lead you to where you're trying to go, that encourage to be able to walk up. If you're using the concept, if you've got some QR code ordering at the table, for example, have a little bit of call to action at the table that says that QR code is one that you can order from, not just one that you can access the menu from. And then I think from there, the staff piece, making sure that you're greeting, making sure that you're not losing that human touch and always having that good connection that you're building right away. And we heard this a lot with a couple of great talks that we heard recently at that North Carolina Brewers Conference, where they talked about how essential it is to have the touch points with the customers. So like when they come in, we've all gone up to a taproom bar, and the ones who greeted us were like, hey, what do you want, bub? Well, the difference between that and like a warm welcome really can make a big difference in that trying that product and then extending the journey.
No, that's great. One of your phrases, time at the table, not at the terminals, which I think is a really nice catchphrase. Cool.
Okay. So anyway, we'll move on to keys of the journey success. So these are the three overarching themes that we found that are really most critical to focus on. So there's attention spans are short. So the more quickly you can provide service and help them navigate the journey, the more likely that you're going to be able to tie everything together into memories that will last. Quality and value. We see this so often. 90% of sunglasses are made by the same manufacturer. Mm-hmm. So the value often lies in the brand perception of what you're experiencing and trying to create. And we'll touch on this in a follow-up slide, but that customers these days, even if there's a change in some of the market in terms of there's ups and downs financially for the average person, what we'll find is that they'll still pay more, and the newer generations are spending a lot more of their disposable income on experience versus things. So the more that we can give them some good positive experiences to latch on, they'll also make that part of that experience, and they'll spend a little bit more for a more premium experience. And then the third is optionality, and this is a big one. We see an emphasis on the variety of product, experience, and workflow, and we'll talk about this a bit more as we go through. But if we can give them options with how they interact with your brand, but also how they can create the type of service flow that they want, and one of those things that we touched on is that hybrid service. It's something that is worth at least having the conversation over to see if it makes some sense for you, because traditionally the ordering process had always been initiated with the staff. And we'll talk a little bit about QR codes specifically. QRs are just a conduit to what we refer to as a self-guided option in your journey. So if you can give guests the ability to order themselves as part of that process, that can have some real value to them. We can talk a little bit more about that as we go through. We go next slide. Okay. Personalization, it's not just because it makes us feel good to hear and see our name, which it does, but it helps a guest to feel that the service is exclusive to them, and that exclusivity we're finding has the real value. It's not just a reward for repeat business. It's like that you're actually recognizing who that they are and the impact that they're having in the business. What we see is that customers will happily pay more for that better experience. We talked about that a bit more as we were sharing the difference generationally in how that they go about their process. So what we're seeing is that 80% of customers are going to be more likely to buy when they're offered that personalized experience, and then they'll pay a 16% premium for that experience. Mm. So some of these, as they multiply together, really make a big difference to the bottom line of the business. Mm. Okay. So technology in the taproom, and this is kind of where we have a lot of our conversations day to day at GoTab. But we'll explore the easy to use tools that give the business a great ROI by giving guests the ability to order more easily. They'll be able to communicate in real time and give your products visibility and access for customers. So if we're looking at the point of sale, QR ordering, kiosks, like all these are tools that we can make available to be able to gain orders, but also better know our customers. So each way that we place an order, if you can place an order and you can also get that customer's information as you're going through it, well, then that gives us that opportunity to extend that journey through that re-engagement post-sale piece. The mobile communication, it's so critical. having efficiencies both in the back of the house, but also being able to connect with guests. If you're an operation that is running lean and mean on your staff, it's difficult to find good staff and be able to support your business oftentimes. So if you do have that good quality staff person, well, that makes a really important difference in being able to interact with a guest. If you've got a lot of space to cover, especially, or complexities in your service, or there's multiple businesses to be able to interact with, the communication piece can be really critical. And there's easy ways that you can set up some automations in that process so that depending upon how they choose their own adventure in this journey, that we can have them like go down certain paths, or choose an option A and a B. And as they go through that, we can communicate back with them, and also create the feedback loops where we gain customer feedback to make sure that what we think is good is actually resonating with the customer. They can give real-time feedback. And then there's digital displays and beer menus. Sometimes these are kind of the bane of the existence of having to put up the menu at the tap room, but they are really essential. Sometimes you have a little bit of a mixed feeling sometimes on certain types of menu displays that maybe show a rating on your beer. Well, you know what, that's totally okay, because that also helps to be transparent about where you're at with your business. You can always own that, make that something that is areas for improvement upon, but you're at least showing what is available. And if you can let that display of what's available also show what is coming and going in real time, even better. So if I'm looking up at a digital display and I can see that something's out of stock versus just dropped off the menu, well then I know that I've been communicated to show that product availability has just recently been out. But I can make note of that's something that's available. So maybe that's going to be the difference, that I'm going to come back next time because I'm going to want to try that one that was out, but at least I know that it was there. So integration with your popular craft beer forums can be helpful for the business, because then that way you can just reduce some steps and make it a little bit easier for you. Next slide. Okay. GoTab's platform is really one of the most comprehensive for F&B operators. It gives you options, again, to help shape that guest experience to the way that you're looking for. So whatever technology that you use, you want to make sure it gives you the opportunity to help shape the experience that you want to see for the guest. So one of the key tools here that there's a lot of misconceptions around that we're going to touch on next is the QR code. The dreaded QR code. Let's go on to the next step. So, the QR code, I think, gets kind of a bad rap at times, and maybe rightfully so. There's not a lot of really good comprehensive ordering components to QR codes typically. Usually when you scan a QR code, it's a static menu that's out of date. It's a PDF you have to download, you have to go into it. QR codes became really popular, as we know, during COVID. So in that process, they were just kind of strewn everywhere, and it wasn't really a tool that anybody showed the operators how to use. They just knew that there was a way to convey information, and that was it. But if we're able to make that part of the brand and make it transactional, actionable, communicative, the more that we're able to make that a tool that normally in a lot of businesses, a lot of shops can just be kind of a throwaway tool. If we leverage that the right type of way, it can really make a difference in that guest experience. And you know what? When you give a opportunity for a self-guided experience, the guests, we have learned historically, they will take it. So if you emphasize that's even an option for them, when we think about the term point of sale, right? That's what it is. It's just a point of sale. It's a location where a sale can be made. There were times that used to be very expensive, large terminals that took up a ton of space. Now they're more nimble. They're easily created. They're, simple devices that can move throughout the business and be fluid with you. Let's go next slide. Okay. And, what's going to be most palpable here is that that hybrid service model. There's a proprietary process that GoTab uses called EasyTab. And what is done here, and we can share a video afterwards that walks through this whole tutorial. But what it does is it just allows us to be able to authorize a tab with a staff person. And instead of you creating a tab completely on your own, adding in your payment information for the first time, what it'll do is it'll transfer your personal information, including that credit card information, to your phone. So we're able to bridge that gap that's normally sometimes the self-guided ordering and the traditional point of sale are separate entities. This actually creates the connection between the two. And when we see that you give the connection between the two, we see a big increase in check average, a lot more smooth options on how you're able to order, and just a better ability to understand your customers because we're seeing what they're ordering when they want to order them. Let's go next slide. This is GoTab's new Pocket POS, mobile Pocket POS. You know, the days of the giant terminals are going to start to go completely away. Already have started to go away. The tap rooms are going with, you know, more tablet based. They're more mobile around. They're able to go off premise, especially if you've got the type of business that you're extending outside of the normal range of the footprint of your business. Just gives you the ability to then like take that technology with you and make it easy, stick it into a pocket, you know, easily able to place orders. And Bluetooth card readers, that's an absolute must. I don't know if we're really going to talk about this too much, but just a quick note on the PCI compliance piece, you don't swipe your cards. You got to make sure that you tap and dip those cards each and every time, because that's going to keep your business protected from fraud. Go next step. Okay, and here's an example of how a large tap room increased their average ticket using the tools that GoTab provides. So we see a very high volume brewery in the Mid-Atlantic in the first quarter of 2022. And this is traditionally a pretty tough quarter due to the weather. We see an average 40% higher tab for guests who order that includes the QR code, okay? So what we're really seeing is when we give that combined ability to place those orders collectively, it creates a major difference in the check average. And we'll talk a little bit about that tipping in the process, because oftentimes we hear, hey, if we give the guests the ability to order themselves, they're not going to be tipping. That is just not what we see. What we see on our statistics is that it doesn't change any difference to the average tip. And there's a couple of steps that you want to take in that process to make sure that the staff are well taken care of. So you include suggested gratuity levels to be able to check out easily. Include auto gratuity. A lot of the transparency in the signage. We talked about the importance of having some good calls to action in signage. Just put it right there. Any open tabs at the end of the night will be subject to a 18-20% gratuity. People don't intend a lot of times. Sometimes they close it out or leave it open. So they want to make sure staff are still taken care of. And we see the same correlation in the increase in the check average, and in that check average, an increase in that tip average. So, you see both from the guest spend, but also the staff tips. When you're using those hybrid models, staff gratuities are really increasing drastically, and they're seeing a great, addition to their pocket. Next slide.
Just a question. So you talk about tips being pretty consistent. What about like walkouts or insufficient funds? Like, how does the system support those kinds of issues?
That is a great point, and that is something that we need to make sure that your system, whatever you're using, is protected against. And there aren't that many that do, but GoTab does have an insufficient funds protection that's added in, so that we're always checking to make sure that the balance is available as they go and they add into their order. So when an initial transaction is made, there's a pre-authorization that's made to make sure that that's able to cover that fund initially. As they continue to order, it doesn't create additional transactions, but it does continue to ping the bank and the processing company so that they can make sure that those funds are available. And GoTab will guarantee that those funds are continued to be paid to the operator every single time.
Cool. Right.
So what does this all mean for guest expectations? Prices on menus sometimes can be out of control. Bill can look, crazy sometimes if there's some, additional expenses that get added to them. What we were trying to make sure is that we've got a, elevated experience, and that we're really personalizing that experience. We want to make sure that we're as part of the process of being able to provide all these additional services. And this is actually what the guests are looking for. When we talk about where we operate a lot in the mixed use space, they're not looking for just a place to go out and grab a drink. They're looking for a place to go out, be able to interact with their local beer tender, their community, but also be able to engage in some games and have some fun and really make sure that there's some entertainment that's involved in it. When we were traveling up in North Carolina, I was in a location that had a human-sized pool table. It was like you stood on a billiard table and you kicked a soccer ball into the different corners. I won't forget that. That's absolutely going to be the type of experience that you want to, if you have the opportunity to be able to layer into your process, and you can just experiment to see what makes sense in your space. But these are the type of things that are going to be able to make it a more cohesive and comprehensive environment that will keep not only the individuals, but also the families, the groups, a lot of those that give more staying power to the experience and allow those customers to stay all day, potentially.
So now this might be an odd question, but I'm just going to ask it. So you talk about like these kinds of activities and activations to keep people there, they're drinking more, they're eating more, but how do you monetize some of that time? Like, do you have any kind of way of, offering a loyalty club, a special membership, a subscription, some way to make sure that, you might keep people dwelling in place for a long time, but they're actually not costing you money over time. You're actually making money.
Yeah, great question, and it's a pretty expansive one. So that this could actually potentially be its own session unto itself. But there are a lot of tools that are out there available for you. Depending upon your state, you can use a lot of our customers that in the Taproom will use Mug Club memberships. A lot of the Mug Club memberships then can link with the segment groups. So part of what we want to do is, as we are collecting a lot of customer information, we want to make sure that we've got those customers then grouped into categories that we can track and also be able to reward. So there's membership ability that's structured into GoTab specifically that would be able to do some nice things on being able to do an annual membership cost to be able to be connected, to be able to connect to their favorite event club. There's also a lot of integrations that are available that are with some of our integrated partners that have some excellent ability to extend that experience and be able to include what you're talking about, Patricia. So I don't know if I want to do we want to mention any top of mind?
No, I think that covers it. That's good.
Okay, great.
Cool.
One of the other trends that emerged from the pandemic is that they're looking for all these experiences to be, again, all in one place. So they're not trying to bounce around as much as they used to. They're trying to find one location that they can get as much of this out of as possible. So in combination of the membership groups that you spoke about, Patricia, as well as this more comprehensive environment, this is one of the locations that GoTab started working with over the past year. T-Squared Social is a massive facility right in Midtown Manhattan in New York City. That's T-Squared. I think it's backed with Timberlake and Tiger Woods, if I'm not mistaken. So I got some celebrity backing behind them. But more importantly, it's a really vast environment where there's all sorts of different experiences to be able to tap into. So from darts to golf simulators to duck pin bowling to lots of activities and games. Even if you can just find a couple ways to be able to add some fun into the location that you've got, that we're seeing this be more prevalent as Eatertainment has grown. We've seen this segment be one of the ones that's rising the fastest. And we touched on this a little bit too, but again, these are a lot of tools that are available. So whether you're a really large location, a really big entertainment venue, or you're a smaller mom and pop location, tap room, a couple thousand square feet, but you want to have the ability to understand how we can use some of these tools to just make it measured and have it be specific to the type of environment that you're working with. That there's abilities to be able to fit all shapes and sizes. Okay. And then the key takeaways for this. So if you're going to come out of this webinar with any information, these are really the 6 highlights that we felt are most important to be able to make sure that you're keeping in mind. So, again, can't impress upon this enough. Staff knowledge and communication really are so critical. Just being able to make sure that not only the staff know everything that's going on, that they're able to be comfortable to convey those message, that they know where those touch points are, that they're consistent with their messaging. I think that's one of the things that we see that the operators have the hardest time with, is just consistency in the messaging. So if you want to do a posting somewhere in the back of the house that's easy for them to touch on, that's just, you know, some important keynotes to use, the way that they describe beers, the way that if they can be uniform in that. If you have one beer tender who's describing something as, you know, malty and bitter, and then the other one is saying that it's, you know, sweet and citrusy. Well, you know, like, where's the divide on that? You want to make sure that they're trying to be fairly consistent so that they can be reinforcing that message and then helping to build those individual silos of awareness for your products. Mapping the customer journey, we talked about that pretty well at length, but if you don't have any idea about how customers are interacting with your brand, start someplace, just start somewhere. Start with understanding, you know, what is your online presence? If they were to just hear about you by happenstance from a friend, how might they go about trying to locate you and find you? And then as they're coming down the street, what does that look like? As they're getting to your door, what does that look like? Just walk through, take a walk in a mile in their shoes and see all of the ways in which you'd want to be able to be approached as that guest, and do some mock services. We do this a lot at GoTab. We do a lot of mock service testing so that we can test out the technology. We do ordering, we add in notifications, and like make sure that the segment groups get their respective promotions, that they're able to place those orders, get the text messages when they need to. So the more that we can go through that process, the better we can communicate and structure that journey the way that you're looking for. And I say this here, like, it's, you know, kind of a oxymoron a little bit, but provide that consistent variety. You know, like, it's really going to be essential to just continue to expand out and try new things, and that's consistent variety in product and experience. Then, you know, the guest having to choose their own adventure. It's up to you. You can decide whether a traditional point of sale, self-guided, one or the other, or both works best for your business. But, you know, make sure to talk with a GoTab consultant who can help you a little bit to understand the technology that's readily available to you, and see the pros and cons of walking through that process and understand what makes the most sense. Because I think that there's a measured approach to using technology in the way that's going to be able to level up the experience for every guest that goes out there. And you just want to kind of do some of that mock service testing to see what makes the most sense for your specific type of business. And then gathering that customer information and setting up workflow automations. This kind of goes into a little bit into that post-sale portion, but we got some great partners who are also other integrated partners that are part of GoTab's tech stack that are able to extend out an ability beyond the Taproom. And we can make this might actually be something that we could possibly make as an additional webinar, Patricia, but there's some really great ways that we can continue to reinforce that message and just set up some automated flows. Like, it's not easy to be able to do all of these things all the time, just, you know, all the one-offs. The bandwidth of the business owner, of the brewery and taproom owner is almost always stretched. So if we can set up some automated processes that are able to continue to still give that same feels of personalization as we collect data, let's leverage that data. And then when we get an omni-channel customer, the lifetime value of that customer increases to about 5x if we can take them as an in-taproom customer that also orders online, or an online customer that also orders in business. And then eventually, if you can get them to be that brand ambassador, and the value then just keeps ticking up and up and up. And then last, you know, experiment with it's okay, we're good. Experiment with the events to build community. You know, the more that we can reach out to new community members, and they can reach out to new community members and so forth, we can continue to build out that exponential relationship of just getting out there to find new people.
Well, I apologize for rushing you along, Doug, but thank you so much for taking the time to do this. You have shared some really neat statistics and data in this presentation that I think people will definitely appreciate. We are going to send the recording out, and my message to everyone that is listening to this video is, if you'd like to see any of this in action, reach out to us on gotab.com. We can quickly set up a demo and talk through your specific situation. So with that, I'll just say thank you and good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.